All right. Well, thanks so much for joining the Post Art Market workshop. Um, I hope that you all had a great time. I know it was a lot of work, but I got so many compliments. People really impressed with not just like the work that they saw, but also your displays, how you're presenting yourself, how you talked about your work, like the whole thing. Um, Everyone was really blown away. So I hope you feel great about that. I know it was a lot of people's first time doing vending, and you could not tell. You couldn't tell who had done it before and who hadn't. So, congrats about that. I hope you're feeling really good. And I know some people made some money, some people you maybe broke even, or maybe you didn't quite break even, but hopefully you had some really good learning and you've got products now. So that's an investment in like the next art market you do. Um, so let's get into it. So again, my name is Maria Salepi, and I'm the Associate Director, Creative Entrepreneurship. So this is the first time Creative Careers put on the art market. We're going to be doing it at least once a year. And I just want to thank everyone for who filled out the survey. And if you haven't, please do it by tomorrow at noon. But I really appreciate you filling out the survey and for your feedback on how we could make it even better next time. We will definitely have it open to the public next time. And that was something that we didn't have control over this time because it was the reunion and there was other programming. But next time it certainly will be open to the public. So what I want to have us do is we are going to do some individual reflection time. Then I'm going to have you break into a small group of like 3 people. We'll do breakouts and you'll share some of your learnings with each other. Then we'll come back and then I'm going to go over taxes, which is really important. Probably a lot of you have not done taxes yet. So it's something to know about. It's something if you want to be a freelancer or have your own, solopreneurship or even have a side hustle, sell things on Etsy. It's something that you're going to need to know how to do. Um, and then we can talk about next steps, like how to grow your art practice. How do we build off the momentum that you've created? So before we get into that, I just want to share some upcoming workshops that we're hosting, Creative Careers. And Ravi, if you could put your screen on, if you're able to, we're asking all people to have their screen on if that's something that's an option. Um, okay, and hold on one sec, I'm gonna close my door. Okay, okay, I'm back. So upcoming workshops, we have October 7th is Level Up, Professional Skills Every Creative Should Know. And that is taught by my colleague, Eilish. Then on October 16th, we have Freelance First Steps, how to get started as a freelancer or from idea to launch. And then November 14th, we have Tax Essentials for creative entrepreneurs. And you all are creative entrepreneurs. We have an outside tax expert coming and we'll be able to answer any questions that you have. There's some other workshops as well, but these were the ones I thought would be most relevant to you all. Good to know. Okay, so taxes for first-time art market vendors. And really, this is for anyone. I'm curious, how many people here, you just raise your hand. Has anyone done taxes yet? Okay, cool. So 3 people. We have also a tax expert. Okay, 4. Great. Um, so this is good to know because you're in the beginning. If you haven't done taxes, you probably will need to do taxes this coming year. The deadline is April 15th. You can always file for an extension, but just plan on April 15th is when it's due. And so declaring income you need to do this when you are selling your art as a freelancer or small business. You're considered self-employed. So even if you only sell occasionally, because you did art market, are self-employed. And what this means is that every dollar that you earn, you have to pay some tax on it, even if it's just a one-time thing. So if your net earnings are basically your profit, You take your income minus your expenses, and that's what your profit is. And so if you make over $400 in a year, then you have to file for taxes. You have to pay taxes. If you made less than 400, then you don't need to. So, as an example, imagine that you sell your art at 3 different art markets and you've earned $1,200 in the year. So your income is 1,200, but then your expenses, you paid $300 worth of supplies, like maybe packaging, business cards, website, whatever, any kind of business expense. And so then you would take your income minus what you spent on the business, and that is your net profit. So that is 900 in this example. And this is what the IRS, Internal Revenue Service, cares about. And that's who collects taxes. So what happens at tax time? And people generally, I like to start thinking about my taxes in early February. And I like to file it. I try to file it in March. So I'm not waiting to the final deadline. But you report your sales as income. So even if you only made $200, it still counts as income. But again, if it's under the $400 threshold for the year, you don't need to report it. And so we showed you this example, but you basically subtract your business expenses to find out what your net income is. You pay self-employment tax and income tax on the net profit. And what is the difference? So self-employment tax covers Social Security and Medicare, and it's around 15%. Plus, depending on your total income, some regular income taxes. So there's two different things, and we'll talk about that in a future slide, the difference between income tax and self-employment tax. So here's how to prepare during the year. You want to track your business expenses and your sales, and keep a simple spreadsheet like the one I shared with all of you. You're welcome to use that, or you can create your own. But you basically want to track what is the money that you're spending, spending out, and what is the money that's coming in. Those are the two main things. You want to save all your receipts for any kind of business expenses. And it's pretty broad. So if you're not sure, err on the side of saving it. Signage, packaging, printing, business cards, websites, just anything like that, any material cost are all business expenses. And then at tax time, that's when you subtract all your business expenses from your total sales. You calculate your net income, and then that's what the government says, okay, based on your net income, taxes are anywhere, it depends on what your bracket is, but it's generally about 25 to 30% of your profits are taxed. So that's kind of a rule of thumb. You want to set that money aside. And again, I think for you, it'll be a little bit less because you'll probably be on the lower threshold. The more money that you make, the higher you're taxed. So you all will be on the lower tax threshold. So at filing time, and that's what they call filing time, is when you file your taxes. You're like submitting your tax form, and it's called a Schedule C. And this is the profit or loss from your business. And this Schedule C is attached to your personal tax income. So now I'm not a tax expert, so I'm just sharing this. This is kind of high level. We do have a tax expert that's coming and giving a talk in November. And so I really encourage you to attend that one, because you can ask really specific questions. But if you made very little, then you're going to be taxed very little, right? You're not going to pay a lot of taxes. But filing taxes keeps you legal, and it keeps a record of your growing business. You don't need to start an LLC or any special business structure. You, as a student, you can file as a sole proprietor. You're already considered sole proprietor if you file your taxes. So what is self-employment tax? So it's how freelancers and small business owners pay into Social Security and Medicare. Like when you have a full-time job, they take taxes out for you. But when you work for yourself, include like freelance or even like, if you just did art markets, you are self-employed. And so that means you have to take out the taxes for yourself. The rate is 15% of your net profit. And so that's 12% that goes to Social Security and almost 3% that goes to Medicare. This is money that you will get later, when you are retired. So this is money that does come back to you way down the road. Now, so that's self-employment tax. And you may also own income tax, and it depends on your total income. And this would be your day job or scholarship. So, for example, if you had a full-time job and you did art markets on the side, then you would pay an income tax, which would be taken out. Your employer would take it out. And then you would also pay self-employment tax because you'd be doing art markets on the weekends. That's the only time where that's like one example of where you'd pay both. In your current situation, you're only going to need to pay self-employment tax, I believe. And everything I say here, because again, I'm not an expert, so please double check it. But for the most part, income tax is when you have a full-time job, and self-employment tax is when you work for yourself, whether that's freelance or whether it's like a one-off art market type thing. So who pays self-employment tax? Anyone who works for themselves. So that's vendors, gig workers, freelancers, if you're a contractor, if you do commissions, that's all considered, so like you're a solopreneur, or you're self-employed. And these terms are interchangeable. That's why I'm using multiple terms, so that it's kind of the definitions of them are a little squiggly. So some people, you say contracting, and other people say freelance. Some people say I'm a solopreneur. Some people say I'm self-employed. So the terms vary, which can be a little confusing. But essentially, if you work for yourself and you've made more than $400 in a year, then you're going to need to pay self-employment tax. It doesn't matter if you're a student or if you're a part-time seller or you've just done like one art market. If you made more than 400. Does anyone have any questions so far? Okay. So, okay, so here's an example based on what we had just talked about. So if you earn, say you do three art markets and you've made $1,200 total. Then you spent $300 on business on supplies, right? So your net profit is $900. Since $900 is more than 400, you need to file. And the self-employment tax for $900, you basically do $900 times 15.3, and it's $138. So that's how much this person would need to pay in taxes. So self-employment tax versus income tax. So self-employment tax, this is your contribution to Social Security and Medicare. It's what employers take out of their paychecks, but since you are self-employed, you take it out of your own paycheck, or you set it aside essentially to pay at the end of the year. We talked about who pays. Anyone who's made more than $400 in a year. The rate is 15% of your net profits. And why it exists. If you work for yourself, you pay both the employer and the employee share, since you don't have an employer withholding your taxes. Now, income tax is a tax on your total taxable income. So that's wages, scholarship, freelance income. And who pays it? Everyone, once their total income is above the annual filing threshold. And it varies from state to state. So for the federal government, you also pay with taxes. You pay the state some tax, and you pay the federal government some taxes. And so if you've made, say in your freelance or full-time job, well, hopefully you're making a lot more in a full-time job than 14,000. So say your freelance business, you've made more than $14,600 in the year, then you need to pay income tax. So anyone who's made, and that's for California. If you move to a different state, you'll have to look that up. Every state has a different threshold. Also, it's great if you want to take notes. I will share this deck with you. So you will have this as well, because I know it's a lot of information. It's like it can be mind numbing, but it's really important. So rate, depends on your total income. So someone making $100,000 is going to pay more taxes than someone making $45,000 a year. So it depends on what your income is how much you pay in taxes. So it can range from 10% to 37% federally, plus the state income tax if it's applicable. And why it exists, it's to fund our federal and state government. So that's the difference between self-employment tax and income tax. So an example, so you're a student who earns $2,000 from a part-time campus job, right? And so that means you will have a W-2. And if you're on a W-2, that's a tax form, your taxes are already withheld. So say you earn $1,000 from doing art markets on the weekends. So here's how it would break down. Your self-employment tax, you would take $1,000 times the 15%, and you'd get $153 that you have to pay to the government for Social Security and Medicare. Then your income tax would be, $2,000 plus $1,000. So you include both of the self-employment and your part-time job. So it'd be $3,000 total income. Then you subtract the standard deduction, which is $14,600 for a single filer. Now, $3,000 is below $14,000, right? So you don't own any federal income taxes, but you might owe some for the state. It varies. So in this case, the student would owe only $153 in self-employment tax. So easy way to think about it is that self-employment tax is for Social Security and Medicare, and income tax is everything else. This is like how we fund the government and the state. And it applies to your total income. So the things that you earn as an independent artist or freelancer, plus if you had a full-time job. And it impacts people if you make more than $14,600 a year for federal government. And for California, it's $20,800. So if you make less than $20,800 in a year, you don't owe the state of California any money. Okay, so that covers taxes so far. And I know it's a lot. If you want, so we've got a tax expert coming in November, and you should definitely sign up for that workshop. She's going to do like a 20-minute presentation, and then it's going to mostly be Q&A for like 20 minutes. So you can ask any of your questions. You can always book an advising appointment with me. I offer advising appointments for creative entrepreneurship. This would include taxes. Again, I'm not an expert, but if you've got some questions, I can try to help you. And if I can't help you, I can share some resources with you. Okay, so now growing your art practice. So here, let's talk some next steps. So we talk about documenting your learnings while it's fresh in your head. Especially, it seems like most people want to do art market next year or the next, there's other art markets too, not associated with Art Center. So you think you'll remember all the things now because they're fresh in your head, but you won't when the time comes. So write down what you've learned, what you would do differently next time. Make a checklist. Was there some stuff that you wish you had brought that you didn't? Notice what sold well, all that stuff. You're writing a letter to yourself in the future for like what to do, how to optimize for the next one. If you took names or cards for people, it's a great opportunity to follow up and build that rapport. You know, if they bought something from you once, they're pretty likely to buy more from you. And so this is a great way to like build your clientele, build your customer base. So if you have a way to reach out to them or on social, tagging them, um, but yeah, if you can, this is great for customer relationships. And it can seem like, oh, I don't want to reach out. But you just even two sentences like, hey, it was so great to meet you. Thanks so much for buying my piece, or thanks for considering buying my piece. Um, you know, please be in touch or reach out if there's a commission or something I can do. That's it, like literally two sentences, but then you've locked in that connection. You should also link people in. So I would go on LinkedIn and make that connection, lock it in now. And I say this because I can't tell you how many times I've gone to a conference, I collect all these business cards, and then I don't follow up on LinkedIn right away or with email, and that connection is lost. It's like, okay, it's gonna be weird. Like a year later, I'm like, hey, do you remember that time we talked for 5 minutes at a conference a year ago? You know, it's just kind of like I've lost that connection. And so I learned from that. And now, whenever I go to conferences or I meet new people or I get a business card, I try to follow up with them within like 48 hours. And I just send a quick note, either on LinkedIn or on email, and just like, hey, Alex, it was great to meet you and connect. I loved, the shirt you were wearing, or thanks for buying my thing, or what, anything personal you can try to like remember from the conversation. And that's it. And then you've locked in that connection. So I would do that. Post art market post. If you're on social, and I imagine most of you are, I would consider doing a post art market post. Share what you learned. If you have any photos, I took some photos as well. So if you want some pictures, I can share with you. Maybe I got a picture. I tried to get a picture of everyone in their booth, but we also had professional photographers going around. So let me know if you want some pictures, and I will try to gather them as soon as possible and share with you as well, so you have them. But I would do a post because even for people who weren't there, and actually especially if people weren't there, it's a way to let your community know, hey, I do art markets. I have stuff for sale. Here's some of the things I sold. So that's a good thing. And then cross pollinate, if you could tag vendors, tag each other. If there's some people's work that you really admire or really liked, try to create a community by exposing. This helps you, build your network and your community within each other, within Art Center. But also you're really doing, you know, it's a really nice thing to do when you can tag your fellow vendors, because then you expose them to new audiences. So it's just kind of a really nice thing to do for each other. And then, there's always things we could do better next time, no matter what. Like I have a whole list of things that I want to do better next time. Um, it's it's try to be kind to yourself. And it's so much more important to be consistent and do every day or every couple weeks or work towards your goal, as opposed to being hung up on perfection, or like, it's just better to practice, because when you practice, you get better, and not being so attached to like having a perfect outcome, whatever that means. Um, it's just good to keep putting your work out there regularly, whether it's an art market or social. And then that's it. So I'm curious if anyone has any questions.